Meeting's been started.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll give everyone a few minutes and to join the rest of the attendees, and then we'll get things started. But good to see everyone. It's good seeing some new faces and some old friends. It's great. Welcome, everyone. Give another 60 seconds to let a few more folks join, and then we'll just get started. And people can join during the intros. So we'll kick it off very shortly. If you're in Canada, we can commiserate about the huge snowstorm that's hitting most of the cities. All right. In the interest of time, I think we can go ahead and kick things off and let the rest of the attendees join during the intros. Everybody, thanks and for taking time out of your day to join How AI Forced the Evolution of Ransomware webinar hosted by KeyData and CyberArk. My name is Brian Reed. I'm the CTO at KeyData Associates, and my background is in, for those of you who haven't met me yet, my background's in PAM, IAM, and SIAM solutions. I personally have a long history of designing and implementing PAM solutions and a long history of working with CyberArk as well. So hopefully I'll bring that to the table today. Love to talk about PAM, love to talk about strategy implementation. And today we're going to be talking about the intersection of AI, PAM, and ransomware. So I guess I do see some existing customers here. I've already chatted with a few of you, seeing some new faces as well, which is fantastic. So just for our new customers, KeyData as an organization, we're 100% focused on identity. We have some of the largest customers in Canada and the United States. We focus on privileged access, identity and access management, ITDR, cloud security, different domains as they intersect with identity. Types of services that we provide advisory and consulting services. That's a big chunk of what we do, product independent advisory and consulting. Of course, we're also implementers as well. So we provide integration services for some of the top identity vendors in the identity space, including CyberArk. We offer managed services for these vendors as well, support and sort of next generation managed service where we also perform improvements and enhancements as we perform operational tasks. Training services as well as all part of our sort of complete bundle of services. If you look at the domains on the left side, again, we're focused on all the primary domains of identity and all the vendors, top vendors within those domains. So that's a little bit about KeyData for those of you that are just getting an intro to KeyData. What we're going to be talking about today is ransomware. And, I know it's important to define ransomware. We had a good discussion before this kicked off on, today, what exactly is ransomware? It's becoming sort of a catch-all threat for anybody that wants to do harm and extort money from your organization. We like to draw a bit of a distinction. It doesn't have to be the traditional definition of ransomware where, you're locking up somebody's computer and ransoming them for a key. Could be a lot of different ways of extorting money from your organization, which makes it, even more dangerous, unfortunately. But you can see that ransomware has evolved over the last while. And every year I update this slide, and every year there's no shortage of scary statistics. On the monetary side, I don't know what statistics can be more shocking. These just get worse and worse every year in terms of how much money is flowing into this marketplace of ransomware gangs. It's just unbelievable, which also answers the question of why does this threat keep growing? Because we're monetizing it. We're providing the funds every time we pay a ransom for the next person to be hit. So, there's certainly the financial statistics are kind of shocking, as they always are. The one that jumps out at me is 75% of attacks, and again, depending on who you talk to, these statistics will vary, but high percentage of the attacks now are simply posting results posting confidential information to public extortion sites. So it's not all about locking up people's machines and taking down their availability anymore. There's all sorts of different creative ways that these ransomware gangs are extorting money. So, a very scary picture of the state of ransomware today. And really what we're going to be talking about and focusing on today is the intersection of ransomware with AI. So I'll be taking you through the agenda. Kevin Vandias is going to be speaking on the evolution of ransomware with AI. Kevin's a consultant for Mandiant, which is a Google company. He helps organizations. He's a managing consultant. He helps organizations plan for and recover from ransomware attacks. He'll be sharing his insights into how AI is changing sort of the ransomware scene today. So that'll be an interesting discussion to kick things off. I'll be coming in second with a discussion on how this ties back to PAM in particular as a control for ransomware, which I think is a lot of the reason why some people have joined this call today, is that they have an active PAM program and they're interested in learning more. Then Len is going to come in for 15 minutes and do a live demo on enterprise privilege management in action. So this is the CyberArk specific tool set. Len's a technical evangelist and a white hat hacker for CyberArk. And he's also an accomplished author. He wrote a book called The Human Hacked: My Life and Lessons as the World's First Augmented Ethical Hacker. So Len's going to be walking us through a demo and some commentary on exactly how this tool in particular, but CyberArk in general, can help you defend against ransomware from within that PAM context. Then we're going to close with a Q&A. So please feel free to put your questions into the chat. We'll try and answer them as we go. But if we're speaking, if one of the speakers is targeting the question and that speaker is in the middle of speaking, they might wait till the end of the segment to answer it. If we don't get to any questions, then we'll bring them up at the end. We've reserved 20 minutes for a Q&A. We've also got some other questions that we commonly hear from customers as well that we'll be bringing up in the Q&A. So yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, and if we don't get to them during the discussion, we'll get to them at the Q&A discussion at the end. And if we don't get to them during the Q&A, we'll be following up directly with you afterwards with an answer in case we become short on time. And we'll also be giving away a copy of Len's book today. So thanks, Len, for arranging that, an autographed copy, no less. And we'll be holding that draw after the segments today, after the webinar today, based on the attendee list that we get who attended the session today. So great lineup. Thank the speakers in advance. And I'll just kick this off with handing it over to Kevin. So maybe, Kevin, if you could do a brief introduction on yourself, take control of the screen, and walk us through your take on AI and ransomware. Looks good.
You're muted, Kevin.
Of course I am. It wouldn't be an online meeting if I wasn't muted. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to be quickly addressing how the threat landscape has been changing a little bit with AI and ransomware. I'll level set that I want to make sure that everybody understands the sky is not falling. AI has not put us in this untenable situation that we can't recover from, but it is changing how attackers are approaching what they're doing. So on that note, I'm going to cover a couple of different things, and the Q&A will happen at the end, so ignore point 4. We're going to talk about the 3 laws of robotics, how AI is transforming ransomware, and a couple of things that we can do as organizations to try to mitigate some of that threat. I am going to talk about some of the future trends of AI and how it might change our approach and the attacker's approach to how they're approaching our organizations. So the first thing that I want to get into are kind of the 3 laws of robotics. And many of us might be familiar with Isaac Asimov's 3 laws. We see it in film, we see it in literature, and this has kind of been, I would say, a philosophical guide for sci-fi and science as we look at the development of AI and robotic technology. Quickly reviewing them, of course, a robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given by human beings, except where they conflict with the first law, and a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and second laws. Very exciting things for film and literature. Asimov's laws typically deal with physical harm. Now, the principles of control and unintended consequences are still relevant, though, to AI and cybersecurity. We're going to dig into them a little bit. But as we go through this, I want us to think about some of the definitions that make this complicated. What is harm? Is it physical, emotional, socially bound? Does financial harm fall into this category? And are all humans protected by the same laws? What about a terrorist? What about warring countries? How would a robot or an autonomous intelligence know who to protect and who to restrain? I'm going to avoid using the word terminate here. So while we're not quite yet in the world of autonomous robots or master intelligences, we're starting to see an evolution of programs and services that fill in some of these gaps. And so let's take a look at some of the changes AI is bringing specifically to the ransomware threat, or the cybersecurity threat in more general, and we'll look at some of those different areas of influence. So as we take a look at how AI is transforming ransomware, there's a couple of high-level categories that we see. So AI is really providing enhanced automation for common tasks. And so this is allowing attackers to target more victims with less effort. On top of that, it's also allowing the improved targeting and personalization of these kinds of attacks. So we look at things like social engineering or spear phishing emails, the days where we used to, digest or interpret fake emails because of poor grammar or strange structure. Those days are pretty much gone because all the attackers are using AI to really adapt and specialize their attack vectors for the organizations they're targeting. The concept of deep fakes comes up. And, we saw them as fairly amusing when they first started, right? We could fake the voices of our co-workers or our families. But now we're actually starting to see attackers utilize these things, voice and image cloning, and they would socially engineer their way into organizations with some very convincing campaigns. So AI is making that a commodity thing, and it's not that hard to do. For Christmas last year, I essentially duplicated the voices of all my extended family, and then I played some audio back of some pretty terrible things they said about each other. It was amusing at the time, but it's so commodity that anybody can do this, which makes us susceptible to these kinds of attacks. And as we look at some adaptive attacks, AI is going to be creating polymorphic malware that changes its code. It's going to be harder for software to detect all these kinds of things. And the adaptability requires defenders to rely on heuristic anomalies and events to detect suspicious behaviors. The EDR, XDR solutions are always improving, but the technology on the back end is moving just as quickly. And of course, we have to think about this AI-powered ransomware as a service. There's been some emergence of the ransomware as a service platforms that leverage AI. It lowers that barrier of entry for cyber criminals, and it makes the overall landscape a little bit broader. So it's becoming a lot easier and easier for criminals to take advantage of kind of these lucrative operations. All that being said, what are they actually doing? So on January 29th, Google Threat Intelligence Group released some observations that they saw of attackers using generative AI. And this is specifically on the Gemini platform. That's the visibility that we have. And they kind of broke it down to a couple categories. So they weren't doing crazy advanced things. They were still using basic things. They didn't engineer prompts. They used it to generate content. APT actors used it to support a lot of different phases of the life cycle, but it's mostly about productivity gains, not really developing novel capabilities. And while they tried to break into the AI bot, on occasion, they didn't really find a whole lot of success there. They did find that Iranian information operator actors, so fake news, manipulating the political landscape, is a really common use for AI right now. So we're starting to see attackers utilize the technology, but they haven't quite weaponized it to the point that everybody's worried about. I wanted to quickly display a video about what the future of AI might look like. And so Google just released a preview of something called Project Astra that uses multimodal AI to demonstrate kind of the capabilities of the future technology. We're not there yet, but it's kind of eye-opening, and we can start to project what is this going to mean for our attack life cycle. So let's take a look at that video really quick.
All right, we've got a Pixel phone loaded with the latest test build of Project Astra, and we're going to leave the office to test it around London. I've got this email with apartment info. Can you tell me the door code and remember it?
I'll remember the door code for you. It is 1170. To unlock it, enter the code and then press the unlock button.
Based on these symbols, how should I wash this?
The tag shows to machine.
Kevin, the audio's muted. Kevin, I think it's your mic.
Industrial design.
Can you hear
Luminary
that?
Bakery is a social enterprise bakery.
Yeah,
and
we can
Tate
hear.
Modern is a modern and
Strange, I don't
contemporary
know why the
art
mic
museum.
muted. Okay.
Now we're going to try Project Astra out on the street. Let's see what it can do. I've always said scone, but now I'm hearing people say scone. Can you help me with the pronunciation?
It's a fascinating topic. The pronunciation of scone, both scone rhyming with gone and scone rhyming with bone, are accepted pronunciations, though regional variations exist.
What can you tell me about this sculpture?
The sculpture you're seeing is called My World and Your World by Eva Rothschild, located in Lewis Cubitt Park in London.
What kind of themes does her work explore?
She creates abstract sculptures that invite viewers to interact with and interpret their surroundings in new ways.
Would these do well if I planted them back home?
Mountain fleece can grow well in New York. They prefer full sun to partial shade and moist, well-drained soil. So your garden in New York should be a good fit for these flowers.
I'm trying to get a gift for my friend, and this is everything she's been reading. How would you describe her taste in books?
Based on these titles, your friend seems to enjoy a mix of history, biography, and perhaps a touch of political or social commentary.
I picked some of these out. Any idea which one she'd like the most?
Consider Half of a Yellow Sun for its exploration of complex social and political issues within a historical setting, aligning with her interest in narratives that offer insight into significant periods.
Will that bus take me anywhere near Chinatown?
Yes, it does. The 24 bus route goes through Leicester Square, which is very close to Chinatown.
Are there any landmarks on the way?
Riding the number 24 bus, notable landmarks you will likely encounter are Westminster Abbey, Big Ben, and Trafalgar Square.
I also met up with some friends to test out the multilingual capabilities.
Est-ce que tu peux me dire quelque chose d'intéressant à propos de ces lanternes?
Bien sûr, je peux vous parler des lanternes. Les lanternes que vous voyez font partie de la porte d'entrée de Chinatown à Londres. Elles ont une signification culturelle pour les Chinois et sont souvent utilisées pendant les célébrations et les festivals. நிச்சயமாக இது லண்டனில் உள்ள சைனாடவுன் நுழைவாயில். இது ஒரு குறிப்பிடத்தக்க அடையாளமாகும். இது அந்த பகுதியின் கலாச்சார முக்கியத்துவத்தை குறிக்கிறது.
Now I'm using these prototype glasses to test Project Astra hands-free. Can you check if it's going to rain anytime soon?
It looks like it is currently mostly sunny in London. Rain is expected tonight from around 10 p.m. until tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.
Hey, what's that park next to me?
The park looks to be Primrose Hill, known for its panoramic city views and the notable Shakespeare's tree.
Can you check if I can bike in there?
It appears that cycling is actually banned within Primrose Hill itself, although it is permitted in nearby areas and the rest of Regent's Park.
I'm biking back to Camden. Can you check if there's any supermarkets along the way?
There's a Sainsbury's on Camden Road, a Morrison's on Chalk Farm Road, and an M&S Simply Food on Camden High Street.
What was the door code again?
The door code you saved previously is 1170.
Oh, thanks. That works.
So the capabilities here are very, very interesting. Using multimodal inputs, it opens a whole new world for what AI looks like. If you think about it from a cybersecurity perspective, how are these applications of technology going to alter the kinds of threats that we're going to have to deal with organizations? And while it's not directly ransomware related, this type of integration could make defense a fairly challenging thing in the future. So if we start taking a look at what can we do, if the bad guys are going to use AI and LLMs for their plots, why don't we use the same technology to our advantage, right? So we have the capability for automation, for detection and response. We need to improve the content in our awareness and training programs to make sure that everybody understands the kind of threats that are going to be out there. Reviewing and improving our backup and recovery strategies. Again, it's not going to be possible for us to prevent every ransomware attack, but we can certainly lessen the impact by coming in and being prepared. Probably the most important thing that we can do is talk to each other, just like we're doing now. Share our learnings, both good and bad, establish some best practices, and hold each other accountable for the things that we're going to do and the things that we say. So as AI continues to revolutionize the environment around us, we need to utilize it and take advantage of the things and the benefits that it provides, and think about the kind of monitoring and solutions that we need to put in place to prevent the bad guys from taking advantage of it. And with that, I'm going to leave it here. I'm just a couple of minutes over time, so I'm going to turn it back over to Brian for an introduction.
Great, thanks, Kevin. We'll all be contacting you later to see if we can buy Project Astra and maybe wander around our home city and get some of that feedback. The applications, obviously that multimodal applications are super scary when you think about how they can be used improperly, but also very optimistic that the future is going to be pretty bright in a lot of different areas. So skipping back to the evolution of ransomware and kind of tying it back to privileged access, transition over to our next speaker. We've all kind of seen how ransomware threats have evolved over the last few years. They've become much more well-funded for all those statistical reasons that I mentioned earlier. The threat environment, our perimeters are growing. Our perimeters are becoming more fragmented every day, with everything from work from home to, working on the road to the way that we're implementing cloud. Attack methods, are increasing for reasons that, Kevin just highlighted as well. And the advanced ransomware scenarios are going well beyond just traditional ransomware for Bitcoin. There's all sorts of complex ways that organizations are being extorted now. And all this is to say, to tie it back to Kevin's discussion, ransomware gangs are starting to transform their organizations as well, just like we're starting to transform all of our organizations with AI. They're doing things much quicker, they're doing things much faster, and they're doing things much better with the help of AI. Fortunately, as Kevin said, it's just in its infancy in a lot of ways, but I'm sure there's lots of great examples of new techniques that attackers are using that are being enabled by ransomware. Certainly their cost of doing business is dropping and their barrier to entry is dropping, which is, really bad news. So if we transition into some more, positive things, I think, one of the key controls for identity for controlling ransomware is identity. I won't go on and on about that. If I show the kill chain, there's lots of different places in this, quote unquote kill chain that we can use to stop attackers. And a lot of those relate back to identity. So, identity is a great place to focus your time and energy and resources if you're thinking about preventing ransomware. Really specifically, things like account hygiene. That's a really boring one, but of course, we all need to have a good baseline of where our privileges are at within our organization. And yes, cleanup is boring and costly, but needs to be done so that you can move on to more advanced things. Just-in-time use cases. Those of you that have PAM programs are seeing a lot of that now. All the vendors, especially CyberArk, are promoting just-in-time use cases. It's where everyone needs to get to. Application secrets, exploding, for all sorts of different reasons. We need to deal with those too. Lastly, the evolution of host-based PAM, to segue into Len's talk, is, really coming to fruition with the advent of threats like ransomware. And, it's all about blocking, it's all about reducing the attack surface and protecting against attacks that you really can't protect against using any other type of PAM or any other controls. So with that, I'll transfer over to Len. Len, you can give yourself a little introduction and then walk us through the demo.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Len Noe. I am, as he said, a technical evangelist for CyberArk. And I am a former, one second, I'm trying to do two things at once here, trying to get this screen pulled up. Okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. All right, let's go back over here. And, I know what it is. I did not sacrifice enough things to the demo
The
gods
demo
this
gods.
morning. Yes, did not sacrifice enough to the demo gods this morning.
Yeah, it's all about keeping 45 windows on your desktop while talking to people and answering in the chat.
There we go.
A little bit
All
like
right, I think-
juggling.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think I'm good to go now. Are we seeing the right screen, everybody? Should be a desktop. Yep, okay, cool. So quick introduction. My name is Len Noe. I am an ethical hacker as well as an augmented human. As Brian said, my first book came out last October. I am a augmented human being with now currently 11 microchips in my body that I use for offensive security. And to a lot of the points that have already been made today, I think personally, when it comes to AI, it's going to, I'm trying to be very cautious of how I say this. In our first talk, I agree with, our first speaker today. The sky is not falling. AI is not going to turn anybody off the street into an elite hacker. What it's going to do is it's going to make the hackers that have this type of knowledge better. This is nothing more than a tool. So just as, a high performance engine can make a race car driver go faster, this is something that's going to take somebody who has the knowledge and the skills and make them more effective. For those that are not experienced in this type of technology and skill, it's going to make them a threat. And in a lot of ways, I see those threats more dangerous than the elite hackers, because these are the people that really don't know what's going to happen with second and third and fourth level collateral damage. So to that point, if we take a look on the screen here, I put together 4 different examples for everyone today in terms of things that we can do very, very quickly and easily in order to lock down not just ransomware, but the steps preceding ransomware. We talk about the final effect and the locking down or the exploitation of someone's either physical, digital, whatever type of persona we're talking about. But there were a lot of steps that had to happen prior to that event in order to have that kind of access. So for starters, I've got lab 4 here. This is a simple credential theft, and I'm going to be using a real tool called ChromePass. This is, once again, not necessarily a hacker's tool. This is actually an auditing tool that has been picked up and adopted by threat actors because it works very, very well for pulling any saved passwords that are embedded within your Chrome browsers. So just by double clicking it, if you've ever accidentally clicked yes to save my username or password, all of that information is saved within Chrome. And with this simple utility, I can get the URLs, the usernames, the passwords, everything back in clear text. As I said, this is meant to be an auditing tool. So you can see we even get some type of recommendations in terms of the strengths of the passwords. There is nothing out there by default, short of not using those types of credential stores, that are going to be able to protect you. Secondarily, we see a lot of initial footholds coming in through Trojan downloads. And that can be done very easily by tools like Metasploit, Cobalt Strike, and most of the attack tools out there have some way of embedding malicious code into legitimate processes. So by controlling the ability to download unhandled applications and things that are not necessarily within your current software catalog, you're opening a very large door. In this case, we see VLC. But when I click on this, we're going to find out this is not VLC. Thankfully, in this case, this was just a Rickroll. But this could be that initial foothold for an attacker into your organization. And without any way of controlling what type of applications are actually being installed, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you may not know what's actually happening within your network. Once again, what's to stop something like this? I'm going to set this one up I know that most people have heard about people getting into cloud environments, running up massive amounts of data storage and compute bills by running Bitcoin or some kind of a miner. Without any type of application control, what I'm going to show everyone here is a real crypto miner. So as you can see, this is actually mining Monero. And if we take a look at what's going on over here within our task manager, this is a CPU-based bit miner. If you're not aware of the applications, you may be able to get this through some of your network monitoring, but you don't want this to actually execute to begin with. So I'm going to stop this real quick. And then finally, I'm going to show you the last type of an attack, which is the whole purpose why we came here today. So we've discussed ransomware and how ransomware is becoming more and more prevalent. I have a personal folder sitting over here that you can see I have a bunch of documents in. And unfortunately, no bad actor is actually going to name their file totally not ransomware. This is going to be just a simple Excel spreadsheet or any other type of file that we can convince you to open. PDFs, Word docs, you name it. And in doing so, what we're going to get is this nice, oh, darn it, I was preparing beforehand. I have to run my decryptor real quick because I'm actually playing with actual real ransomware. I'm using Shiva ransomware to show you guys exactly how this type of process works. So let me go ahead and, of course, we're going to use LEET as our decryption password. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and run my totally not ransomware. We're going to let it, and boom. You've been infected by ransomware. Check your personal folder. And just like that, now all of our data has actually been encrypted. Now, to the point, while I go ahead and decrypt this and show you how easy we can actually prevent these attacks, I want to actually point out something. Brian said in the beginning, we had some discussions before this. I'm the guy that actually threw out the fact that I do not believe that we have seen ransomware in quite a few years. Everything is now thrown into the general catch-all of ransomware, almost like we've done with the blue screen of death for Microsoft processes. We haven't seen ransomware, in my opinion, in quite some time. We've been dealing with extortionware ever since the first person realized by not giving it back, I can make more money by turning this stuff loose to the world. So all we have to do to prevent these types of attacks, and these are one-click solutions. I'm going to go ahead and log in to my CyberArk EPM tenant. And through our default policies, we have the ability to prevent most, if not all, of these attacks that I have shown you with a single click protection. So if we come down here under our policies, and we're going to start with some real simple stuff. So you'll see right up here, we have detect privileged unhandled applications, protect against ransomware, control unhandled applications downloaded from the internet, and straight up control unhandled applications, period. So let's start with the simple one. Let's say we want to control we want to block access to any internet application, anything that's been downloaded. Now, not only will this help maintain your software security compliance, it's going to prevent that same type of thing that we dealt with before. So let's go back to our, not this one, we want this one. So this was our Rickroll. So the first thing I'm going to have to do, since I needed to be able to demonstrate, is I'm going to go ahead and resume the protections of EPM. These actually will pool the policies on a scheduled rotation that is modifiable. The default, I believe, is every 5 minutes. It will look for new and updated policies. The policies are pushed over standard 443, so there's no additional ports that need to be opened within your firewall. Now that we've done that, we have said don't let anything that comes in unless it's been approved, if it's been downloaded by the internet. So now when I go ahead and try and run this, you'll see that the application has been blocked. So the next part of this is to go back into our standard policies where I've already set up what is called a trusted source. So if you do have software that's been approved, your IT department can make sure that these are all clean. They can do CRC and RC checks against the files. You can set it up by either network location, digital signature, publisher. There are multiple options all the way down to actually saying these are allowed based on this specific hash. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this trusted source policy that says anything that is in that network share location is okay to install. And just to show you that it works, we're going to refresh our policies. I'm going to try and do that same one that we just did. And you'll see that we're still blocked. However, if I go to my IT share, here it is here. And now I can select this one, which is an approved location. And this will actually, even though VLC requires administrative privileges, you can just basically force a justification here, or you can remove this and just allow it to install on its own. And just like that, we now are giving people without local administrative rights the ability to install UAC controlled applications. Same thing we can do when it comes to our unhandled application of that bit miner. So if we go back into our default policies, and now we say restrict all unhandled applications. So any applications that are not known within the EPM product should be looked at as unhandled and therefore not allowed to actually perform. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do that. We're going to go back into our bit miner. We're going to run the second script. We're going to keep it. It will still allow it to download, but when it attempts to execute, it should fail. 3, 2, 1, and go. And just like that, our bit miner is no longer allowed to actually function. This gives you, as your security definers, the ability to limit the access to anything that's going on without your knowledge. Now, the last one I get a lot of questions on. So we do here at CyberArk have the ability to do what is we call ransomware protection. Now, I want to be very cautious in the way that I explain this. We are not an anti-ransomware platform. The ability to prevent ransomware is actually due to the fact that we are actually looking at everything that is going on within this system. So when we say we can protect against ransomware, this is not signature-based. This is behavior-based, which means that we have actually tested the EPM product on over 1 million ransomware variants, and we have stopped every single one of them, including the new ones. And that's because all ransomware does follow a specific process. So all I have to do is say restrict and protect against ransomware. This will essentially isolate the application when it tries to launch, and it's going to look for behaviors such as trying to reach out to the internet to get back to its command and control server. It's going to try and gain access to the local LAN. It's going to look for specific file types. And we actually will address this from the behavioral aspect. So when we go into our ransomware attack once again, we see that all of our files are in fine and working order. Now, when we go into our ransomware attack, this out of the way, and actually launch that again, it's going to look like it worked. It's going to still tell you that it executed because this is part of the actual macro. But when we actually go ahead and look at the results, all of our files are still correct. And the Shiva exe, the actual malware piece executable itself, was actually stopped. And one of the ways that we do this is not by not allowing applications to open any other file type, but what their expectation is. So Word is the only thing that can open doc files. Excel is the only thing that can open an XLS. This is just one of the many parts to this product, but just like that, right from our dashboard with 4 clicks, we were able to stop not only the 3 precursors to a ransomware attack, but the ransomware itself. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to perform this demonstration. And if there's any questions, I'll address them during the Q&A.
Awesome, Len, thanks. I myself put a question in the chat for you. I can read it out. Doesn't Windows, MS Defender, McAfee, you name it, already do some of these preventions, or where are they falling short, in your opinion?
Some of them do. The problem when it comes to a lot of MS Defender and your off-the-shelf antiviruses, these are predominantly signature-based. We see a lot of new technologies coming out where they're trying to build AI capabilities into an existing product, but they are still, in my opinion, reactionary. They're waiting for someone to discover a signature of a piece of ransomware. It gets added up into their database, and it's looking for those digital signatures, whereas I think going from a behavioral base allows us the ability to detect even new variants. And that, in my opinion, is one of the bigger differences, along with the fact that antiviruses, your McAfee, your MS Defender, these are looking for viruses. We are addressing privilege on the endpoint. And one of the things that has been said by Mandiant, as well as pretty much every industry leader, is in order for ransomware attacks and true breaches to expand beyond the initial surface, you need privilege. You need the ability to elevate. So those products are specifically for viruses, malware, and ransomware. We are addressing things from a more habitual perspective, and it goes beyond just viruses and antivirus. We have the ability with this product. One of my favorite things to ask people is, do you really like giving your domain and enterprise and schema admins those group rights? Because essentially you now have given someone the ultimate power within an organization. Through this tool, we can actually limit the privilege and capabilities of the top 3 groups within Windows. We can give domain, schema, and enterprise admins the ability to look at the logs on a domain controller, but we can take away their ability to delete it. We have the ability to watch the watchman, essentially, through this product, and it goes beyond just viruses and anti-ransomware, which is why I said originally, it's not an anti-ransomware product, but through proper configuration and control of privilege and elevation, we can stop ransomware based on its known capabilities and traits.
Great, thanks. I know a lot of people were kind of wondering that too. The other question we get a lot is, if you've got sort of an enterprise PAM solution and you're rotating your passwords, your enterprise passwords, and all these other great things, is there still a play for an endpoint PAM solution?
Oh, absolutely. As a former Black Hat, the one thing I've told many, many people is there's always something to be gained. Let's use your example. They're using a PAM solution, so maybe the escalation to higher privilege becomes more difficult. But if I can get some piece of information about somebody in a tier 3 on an endpoint layer, I can perform a more spearfish style of ransomware or phishing on this person to the point where they may give me the keys I need for that elevation. The truth is, keeping people out of our environments, and like we did back in the old days with the DMZs and the internet edge and all that stuff, it doesn't work. We need to understand that we have vendors, we have customer success, we have support staff, we have any plethora of individuals coming into our networks at any given time. And they're all interacting in that same tier 3 that the rest of our day-to-day users and where all of our non-privileged users should be. So the ability to lock down at this level, even if you're using some type of a jump box or some type of proxied navigation between your tier 3 and your tier 2, you still don't want things going on there. We also have the ability of living off the land types of attacks, where if I can get onto that box, one of my favorite personal tool living off the land tools is the CERT utility. I can download files, I can execute files through the CERT utility, and most companies don't lock that down. With EPM, again, we're back to the concepts of privilege and elevation. I can limit an attacker to the box that he got on. And then if we have proper monitoring, SIM logs, and things of that nature, analytics, by isolating him, the dwell time should be very, very low, at which point you can then take that box and perform any number of digital forensics or incident responses.
Yeah, awesome point. It's not always about keeping them off the box. That's step number one, which is difficult, especially in a distributed environment or a complex environment. But if you can keep them in jail once they get on that box, that gives you a lot longer time to detect and contain. So, yeah, good point on that. So I guess we'll give some time to our final question. I saw that Yul Gui, who's part of KeyData, has been monitoring the chat. He's been helping with the technology, so to make sure this webinar went off okay. So thanks for that, Yul. Put a few questions in the chat I can see, which is great. Kevin, you haven't spoken for a little bit. I know you work with organizations that are either planning for or recovering from ransomware outbreaks. I don't want to call it final thoughts, but I think we've reached that point. Any sort of final thoughts on what you see as being important kind of takeaways in terms of recovering from or preventing ransomware?
I think the most important, yeah, it's a huge topic. The most important thing that companies can do is they need to have these conversations now, not in the middle of an incident. And so the concept of preparation in the incident response lifecycle is absolutely critical if we're going to reduce the impact of these kinds of events inside of our companies. And so I love to see things like tabletops. I like to see reviews of playbooks and incident response plans. I like to see the technologies being tested and validated against the use cases that have been created, making sure that your SIM use cases are firing, that your alerts are at the appropriate level. All of this preparatory work comes at a cost, a human resource cost, and there's a capital cost associated with all these things. But if you are a practiced organization and you experience a ransomware attack, your recovery and your response strategies, if well practiced, will reduce that impact dramatically. And it won't be a news generating event. It will be we experienced attack, we responded to the attack, we're operational again. That's the best outcome you can hope for.
Yeah, well put. Len, can you top that? Any final thoughts on any final thoughts from your perspective as sort of a practitioner and a sort of kind of experienced on both sides of the attack surface?
Absolutely. And first off, I want to agree 100% with everything that Kevin said. Anytime you're being reactionary is not going to be a good outcome. But the one thing message that I want to try and put out to people is when it comes to our identities and identity security, and this plays down into the concepts of ransomware as well. With the world that we're living in today, with deepfake, with AI, the concept of identity, in my opinion, is very, very blurred. I think we're still looking at identity as multiple verticals. We have our physical identity, we have our digital identity, we have our medical identity, we have our consumer identity. But the truth is, all of these identities are all interconnected in ways that we're just now fully starting to understand. We're seeing more what I would consider to be almost computer style attacks that are going beyond the digital and into the physical realm. Between ransomware attacks, utilizing deepfake audio that are putting people into fear for loved ones, to the same concepts that we've seen in the digital world are now manifesting themselves in a digital way within the physical world. And as such, the protections that we've all come to understand through the digital versions of identity security, we need to start looking at how those can expand into our physical lives and start living identity security as a lifestyle choice in all aspects of our life. If we talk about zero trust, we've been teaching that kind of concept from a human perspective for years, but now that we have an extension of our physical selves within our mobile devices, we hand those to people without even thinking. So when it comes to ransomware, I think we need to start looking at ourselves and our individual contributions to being able to support our enterprises, and realize that it's not always going to be the C-level executives that are targeted. A lot of the times it's the people down in tier 2 that may not have a fancy title, because that's where my initial foothold is going to be. So we all need to be responsible for our own security, as well as our portion of maintaining the security for our businesses and enterprises.
Yeah, well put, Len. So yeah, I'll offer my final thoughts then on this as well, tying in with both of those themes. Actually, I wasn't sure what both of your take was going to be on the final question, but it ties in nicely with what I'd like to say, which is, help in planning. As all the speakers said, actually, prevention is not one thing. It's all sorts of different levels of controls and prevention, detection, and response combined. So, it's a multifaceted approach, but it's something that we should be doing for all sorts of threats, not only ransomware anyways. So, to target something a little bit more specifically, we do have a PAM assessment that a lot of you found out about that are existing customers. If not, basically, it's a complimentary assessment that takes a quick look at your PAM program, takes a quick look at where you hope to go, and provides recommendations in a very quick format to get you started on that journey. Or if you have an existing implementation, hopefully put in place by KeyData, we can take a snapshot and tell you where you can go next. So we have data sheets and collateral on that. If anybody's interested, you can register you can request more information at the contact link on this slide, or you can go ahead and undertake an IAM assessment automated on our website as well. Lots of different ways of engaging with KeyData in this area. The identity guy is going to tell you that identity is the most important thing in ransomware. I would say that, truthfully, it is one of the most important things. And amongst the identity domains, PAM, again, is probably a great area of focus if you're trying to undertake that. In a broader sense, Len and Kevin made some really good points about a holistic approach, which I also agree with. So hopefully everybody got some great takeaways from this presentation. You have the contact information for all the speakers. You can get it through myself as well. And just like to take a few seconds to thank everybody for attending the webinar today, putting in some nice questions into the chat, and hope everyone has a fantastic day. Thanks again, speakers, and great day. Bye for now.
That was fun.
Yeah,
That was
we should do
great.
that again.
Thanks, guys.
Great job,
Kevin,
everyone. Great job, everyone.
I know this may not be the appropriate time or place, but I'm going to ask anyway. I really thought some of your concepts were really cool. Are you interested in jumping on my podcast?
Sure. As long as I have to clear it through the Google Meisters, but yeah, happy to have some conversations.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Justin Hutchins. He wrote the book, The Language of Deception on AI, came out last year. He's actually my co-host, so I think we could have some really cool AI conversations, man.
Let's chat. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not the Google AI expert, obviously, but definitely we're exposed to it constantly from the security perspective.
And if you want to check us out, the name of the podcast is called The Cyber Cognition.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll hit you up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too, man. Had a great time. As far as KeyData people, somebody want to send me the address where you want me to send this?
Yeah, Len, I'll follow up with you on that. I'll send you the address and make sure everything's good.
All right, appreciate it. It was a pleasure working with you guys today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Bye.
Frank, keep working hard too. I see you still there. Maybe he's still there. All right. Thanks, Joel.